Welcome everyone to the Release 3 2021 highlights presentation. So as you guys know, Sage Intacct is the only mid-market solution that puts out 4 regularly scheduled updates a year, once each quarter. That can seem a bit daunting sometimes when you've got all this new functionality out there. So that's what we want to do, and that's why we do these presentations, is to help you cut through some of what might be out there, help you learn a little bit more about what's pertinent to you, and hopefully point out some new features that you might not otherwise be able to take the time to explore. So as we go through this, if there's anything at all that you've got questions about, please do put it into the chat. Or if you would rather follow up with an email, then you can always email our ERP support at ddaftech.com, and you'll see that email address here in print shortly. Okay? So again, thank you everyone for coming. Excited to talk about Release 3 and all the wonderful things that it includes. Before we jump into that, though, I do want to talk to you about 2 things that I think, or 3 things that I think are very important for you all to know. First of all, if you missed the recent press release, and when I say recent, it would have been probably mid-July, somewhere in there, Dean Dorton, Alan Ford did acquire a company called Breakpoint Technology. And Breakpoint Technology, to boil it down, is a company that specializes in data analytics and collaboration tools. So whether you're talking about needing some in-depth Power BI reporting, other types of business intelligence reporting, even a little bit of data coding, or I should say development code work. Breakpoint has a tremendous team. They bring a lot to the Dean Dorton organization, and they give us an extension of tools that we can now bring to our clients. So if you do have any Power BI or other reporting requests or anything as it relates to the different collaboration tools that are on the market, we definitely love to talk with you. I see a lot of the data analytics could of course tie in with some of the information that you would have in Sage Intacct. So if you have any questions about that, certainly do reach out and let us know. Also, we have a new team member. Althea Sussman is a new team member with Dean Dorton on the software team. She comes to us with 9+ years of Sage Intacct experience. So she's got quite a bit of Sage Intacct knowledge that she brings with her, a lot of experience in the not-for-profit arena. Over the years, she's worked both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes in a number of different nonprofits, and also worked on a number of implementations for nonprofits as well. So we're excited to have her on our team, and she does live in New York. So she is up close to the city that never sleeps, at least. Welcome, Althea, to our team. And then one last thing before we go forward. So we talked about this, and I think I talk about it each time I do one of these quarterly presentations, but the preview companies are a really nice tool to have, especially if you're an organization that either has integrations into Intacct, customizations on Intacct in some way, or really just would like the chance to preview the new functionality that's coming out with each release. Getting a preview company is free. There's no charge for it. If you don't have one, or if you're unsure if you have one, and bottom line, you would like one, shoot an email to kdenton@ddaftech.com, and Kim will reach out to you, and she will help you get a preview company set up. The nice thing is, or the thing to remember about this, is it is a copy of your data as of when the preview company is created. So as you're going through these new features, you can test them out with your data. It's not just dummy data that you're playing with. So if you do want one, reach out by September 20th. I know that that's almost a month away, but it'll probably be here tomorrow. So go ahead and send an email if you're interested. All right, so let's jump into what you came here for. Here's our agenda. We're going to cover a few updates that have happened since the last time we spoke in Release 2. I'm going to talk briefly about some changes that are really geared for Canadian organizations, and I don't think we have that many on the call. If I am wrong about that, please reach out to us. I'd be happy to do a separate session in more detail on the Canadian, the multi-tax, anything like that that you would need. And then we're going to cover the rest of the story, as someone famous would once say. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. So first of all, there's a little did you know question here, and I started to set up a poll for this and get some responses from folks, but I decided not to try to stretch my technology knowledge. There have been some updates since 2021 R2. It has been announced, for example, that the Wells Fargo payment manager will go into retirement as of July 14th, 2022. It is in fact no longer being sold, and it is being replaced by the vendor payments powered by CSI module. There is an early adopter program. As you can see here, if you have a desire to get more information about that, you can either email Kim Denton, kdenton@ddftech.com, or erpsupport@ddftech.com, and we can get more information over to you about it. But the Wells Fargo payment manager is being retired as of July 14th, 2022. So you got a little time, but again, might as well plan ahead. They've also announced a new Sage Intacct Learning Center membership. It's a $1,200 fee. The wording on that's a little bit off, but it's a $1,200 fee. You can take advantage of your company being given access to the Learning Center. These are going to give you, or this is going to give you access to on-demand classes with labs, with hands-on activities, a number of things that you can go through, a number of different sessions on a number of different products, and it is continuously expanding. So I could tell you now that it's 50 to 60 to 70 courses, and then in 4 months, it hopefully will be 120 courses or something like that. If you have any questions about that, shoot us an email. There's a web link that'll be in the slideshow that you get that you can look at as well too. But for those of us that are CPAs, these courses do provide CPE credit. So that's a great thing as well. So there's been some updates to the Sage Intelligent Time solution. And if you have not heard of this, then shame on us. But it's an AI, artificial intelligence powered timesheet built into this financial solution. Gives you an ability, it gives you an ability to, for example, sense the time that you work on something, to be able to perhaps parse through your calendar to look for time entries that could be valid, as you see the different icons here for Slack and Chrome and different things like that. There's a lot of potential interfaces there for the AI-powered intelligent time. And again, if you have any questions about that, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. And then if you are running the Sage Intacct Fixed Assets module, not a third party, but the Sage Intacct module, do want to let you guys know that version 8 is out. And if you aren't running version 8, or even if you're not sure about what version you're on, shoot us an email and we'll be more than happy. There's a lot of good fixes in the Fixed Assets module in that version 8 that was recently released. So things do happen in between big quarterly releases. You know, keep an eye out for your Intacct homepage, keep an eye out for emails from us, which I will take a moment to do a plug. If you're not currently getting our Bits and Bytes Sage Intacct newsletter, shoot an email. Again, Kim Denton, ERP support, ERP sales, anything along those lines, and we'll be more than happy to make sure that you get into our newsletter as well. Okay. All right, enhancements for Canadian customers. Like I said, we're going to go through this a little bit quickly because I don't believe that we have anyone on the line with a Canadian entity. If that is wrong, then reach out to us and we'll be happy to go over it in detail. So we now support Canadian pre-printed checks. Yay! Pre-printed checks with the check portion printed at the top. You know, no worry about the date settings anymore. Currency for the bank account must be set to CAD, so the Canadian dollars. And then we've got a phone number there where you can call and get these pre-printed checks. But we do now support Canadian pre-printed checks, and there's slight differences with the way that they're created. So that's a big step forward. Multi-tax. So multi-tax is a big push by Sage Intacct. Even if you're US based, if you have subsidiaries or sister companies in other countries, especially the ones that you see listed here, then we do have some really good functionality for you in terms of VAT taxes, you know, the GSTs, all of that. So there's been a tremendous push within Sage Intacct to internationalize the software, and this multi-tax component is a big part of that to get the system to calculate those tax rates. So, and then after R3, so again, there are things that happen in between these bigger releases. You know, here's some additional things that we will be doing with those with that functionality in between the releases. And I'll let you guys take a look at these when you get the slide deck if you're interested, and give us a call if you have any questions. All right, advanced CRM. So we're just gonna plow through the modules here. We're going to talk about all the different added functionality within this release, and then potentially see a couple of things at the end if we have the opportunity. So, advanced CRM integration enhancements. You can now customize your field mappings in greater detail to your specific needs. They've opened that up quite a bit in this latest release. Project dimensions now synchronize even if you don't have the full project's application. So they added that in to give you some increased reporting capabilities. Contracts and contract lines can sync in draft mode. Option to sync a contract only once, and then supports the new billing contract type of committed quantity. And then, of course, if the renewal in contracts is marked as a draft, then the renewal in SFDC will also be created as a draft. So a couple of things in this list, cleanup items, couple of things in this list, new functionality. But as always, Sage Intacct looking at the ideas that are in the community and taking those into account when they create these new releases as well. So a few enhancements here to the advanced CRM integration. And let's talk about reporting. I've always said that if you can't get the data back out of the system in a fashion that you can use, there's really no need to put the data in the system. ICRW and IVE. So we'll break that down. The interactive custom report writer and the interactive visual explorer are the two tools that we're talking about here. If you don't know what those are, shame on us. We should have done a better job of letting you know about those tools. Contact us if you want more information, but we'll talk a little bit about them now. So ICRW is a tool that is, I would closely equate it to something like a SQL Server reporting services or a Crystal Reports or a number of those types of tools that have been around for a long time. It gives you the ability to create some more advanced reports in Sage Intacct and to do some drag and drop formatting, groupings, subtotalings, some basic charts and graphs and things like that. So a very good reporting tool. Will access all aspects of Sage Intacct data. So order entry details, purchase order details, requisitions, contract details, all of that. We'll access all that information. And then the Interactive Visual Explorer is what I would term to be something like a Power BI type tool that is built into Sage Intacct. So I mentioned earlier that we have the data analytics group now that concentrates on Power BI and those types of tools. IVE is something that's built into Intacct that is very similar to that. You can have customer data maps of the United States, for example, showing where your customers are, and some really nice visual reports in your system, hence the name, the Visual Explorer. So these have been around for a little bit. ICRW has been around for a few years. IVE has been out now for several months. They've added some functionality to include checklists and change request reporting into both of those. Newly available fields that you see here in contracts and cost types and those types of things in projects and or construction related fields, and then some new fields in AR for credits applied. So expanding the capabilities of the tools and the data that the tools can access. Employee users can run ICRW and IVE reports. So as you look here, you can go into the reports as you create them, and you can now add employee users to those that can run these reports. Date preferences on reports, so you've got an ability to set some additional filters, set some formatting, and all of these things work all across the different reporting tools, including the standard good old custom report writer in Sage Intacct. So set your preferences and then set some parameters and some filtering in those reports as well. So new features there. Financial reports, quick start report library. There's a new feature in here, if you'll see on this left-hand side, where you'll now be able to click a layout button. So it'll give you a mini preview of the financial report. It won't show you the report in detail, but it will show you the layout of the financial report. So that can be handy. You can look at it ahead of time and know, is this really the one that I want to install, or is it perhaps the one underneath? And we'll take a look at that if we have some time here at the end. So as of R2 2021, the GL reporting feature works for all standard reports. It now works with newly created financial reports as well. So that's a nice thing that's been extended into existing financial reports. Here's they've added some additional field choices in the financial reports to create some additional normalized views. So budget to actual, the right-hand side there, budget to actual normalized, period variance normalized, and period difference normalized. So in other words, if the revenue is higher this month than last, it'll be shown as a positive number in the reports, helping you get a quicker, better picture of how those things are working. So changing to the forecast column here, not only do we have forecast prorated, but we have forecast for the full period as well. So a couple of different choices there for how you do those. And then if you are going to use the forecast for the full period, there are additional fields that are required. So the column type opens up the option for the budget, which you see here right underneath that. You need a period that is not just a month, can't be just 1 month, and then expand the period to match the budget. So if you're budgeting by month, expand it to months. If you're budgeting by quarter, you would expand it to quarters. Next, in the financial reporting area, give me some space, right? Don't crowd me with all of your data. You can now insert some spacer columns here so that as you are printing these financials or even viewing these financials, you will have a middle ground here view where you're getting a space. And it's really just a matter of setting up a column type called spacer. Dashboard enhancements, 3 new components: attachments, billboards, and custom navigation. I'll show you these in the demo if we have some time here, but I also will mention that these are very well covered with exactly what they do in the recording for R3. So as you know, Sage Intacct puts out a ton of information about each of their releases. You could say to a certain extent that we don't even really need to do these, but we still like to do them because we know sometimes that you know, you like to see us do things, and we don't want to depend totally on Sage Intacct. But they do have a very good recorded video on what these new dashboard enhancements can do, and I would encourage you guys to take a look at those. It would be in the help or on the home page of your instance of Sage Intacct in the release notes for R3. Multi-base companies. Multi-base companies. All right, so what is a multi-base company? It's pretty simple what a multi-base company is. So multi-currency is a company that has the same base currency for their entities, but they do want to enable and allow multi-currency transactions. So you may report in US dollars, but you may have sales overseas that are done in euro or yen, or you may go north with Canadian dollars or south with pesos. So you have the ability to transact in multi-currencies. I will point out now they do, in a couple of releases ago, they did add messages like this that say you cannot disable after transactions are entered. So, you know, again, they are pointing out the fact this is a one-way street. Now, a multi-base is an opportunity in Intacct to have multiple different base currencies within your shared environment. So you may have a company in Ireland that has a different base company. You may have a company in Canada that has a base currency of Canadian dollars, for example. So you are enabling an ability to have different base currencies in the system. And you've always had that. This is just a little more straightforward and more manageable than it was previously. Part of that is due in part to the domestic consolidations module and some additional functionality there that was needed inside of domestic consolidations. Okay. And that you can see that if you have the domestic consolidations module, there's some additional changes in there and how those configurations are done. So purchasing. Big thing here with purchasing, 3-way match is the process of matching the invoice, PO, and receipt to validate the details of a purchase before making a payment. So Sage Intacct is doing some revamping of this three-way match process, making it tighter, making it something that is a better workflow within the Sage Intacct application. If you have a need to participate in this early adopter program for this functionality, please send us an email at the address that you see there, and we will get connected with you to help you determine if you are a good fit and whether it would benefit you to go through the early adopter program. But that's exciting. That's more traditional distribution type functionality that Sage Intacct is adding into the system and making these processes in Intacct even more user-friendly, even more automated than they were before. So lots of checks and balances and automation type technologies inside the three-way match. Outlier detection. So I'd love to stick another poll question in here too. I think next time I do one of these, I am going to add some poll questions, but I'd love to know a silent show of hands in your, just mentally in your head, if anyone has heard of outlier detection, and certainly if anyone has had the ability or had the forethought to turn it on yet within their instance. So Outlier Detection was released a few releases ago. I believe it was back towards the beginning of this year. And it is an ability of the Sage Intacct application to start using some artificial intelligence to go in and look at the transactions real time as you're putting them into the system in certain areas. And right now it's general ledger that they're concentrating on. So if you go in and enter a general ledger journal entry, for example, that is way different from what it has been the last 3 months or 4 months, or parameters that you are able to establish, Sage Intacct will warn you that this transaction seems to be different. It will point it out to you. It's got an ability to put these things in different feeds and really try to make you aware that the transactions that you've entered into the system are outside the norm. And this is a way for Intacct to help work towards a continuous close, a shorter month end for everyone, by catching issues as they are created potentially in the system. So the enhancements, you can now prioritize what is important to you. Is it a materiality threshold? We're 10% more than we were previously, we're 30% more than we were previously, or is it something maybe more in coding? So the last 4 of these journal entries have been entered into the system and coded to this department. This one is coded to a different department. Did you mean to do that, or is that an issue, right? And then they have enhanced the information that is presented to you to tell you why the transaction was being flagged, to give you more information out of the gate so you can make a more intelligent decision quickly. Okay? So here's the screen where you can go in under the general ledger setup and you can customize your outlier detection. Just noticed they spelled outlier wrong there. 2 points for me, I guess. We'll have to let them know about that. Define custom settings for the outlier detection evaluation. Journals not included here use the default settings. So in other words, you can come in here, you can pick a journal, payroll journal or something of that nature. Here's your materiality threshold and then your dimensional priorities in here. So you are able to configure these things and get specific with your different general ledger journals as to what you're looking for that would constitute something that is an outlier. Okay. Outlier details have a new look. So if we notice this screen, the audit adjustments journal, first of all up here, unusual historic matches have been found. So you've got if you turn on the GL Outlier Detection, you'll see a message at the top of the screen. And then down at the bottom, you'll now see a color-coded view of the potential issue, right? So here we see on this top line that it's a potential coding issue for this Sterling Bank part of the transaction. And then down here, the benefits life insurance line, it is a dollar amount. So maybe the coding, you chose a different department or a different location, different entity than you normally do. And then for the benefits life insurance, it's greater than 10% more than what it normally is, or greater than $250 more than it normally is, or whatever you've got your criteria set to be. So, you know, good enhancements here to make this really pop for you and for you to understand exactly what is going on. And again, try to get these issues straightened out before you get to the month end and you're trying to do it all at one time. Okay. If you haven't turned on GL Outlier Detection, give us a shout. It is at its basic core, it's easy to turn on, and it can be helpful in a lot of cases. You know, maybe you make all the perfect journal entries in the system, but even on that case where you get one or two, it's good to catch those before the month-end close process so that your month-end is smoother. Accounts payable. So vendor remittance flexibility. You now have an option to include or not the PDF attachment, and you can include payment details as a grid in the payment notification email. So, you know, check this box not to include the PDF. Check this box to put the information in the body of the email. Could be something that comes back to your preferences or something you hear from your different vendors for how they would like to receive things. This isn't a vendor by vendor setting in the system, but it is a new way to be able to process the information and get it out to vendors. Okay. Accounts receivable. Unapplied credit adjustments from posted payments. Once they're unapplied, the credit and the invoice become available again. If the invoice was paid with one of the payment methods in credits, you can reverse that payment. And so it's all here in a checkbox to enable inline credits to be automatically applied to invoices. Okay, does not apply to the inline credits that are applied automatically. Okay. So with the cash book enhancement, this is the first phase of the cash book enhancement. The credit memo is now not part of a payment applied to an invoice. Will show in the GL on cash books. So a good change there for those credit memos and being able to see them in your cash books. Okay. Secure PDFs. So this is probably one of the more important changes in Release 3 of 2021. It could sound like something that's very simple and straightforward, but it does give you a measure of security and knowledge in knowing that these PDFs that go out cannot be altered. I don't know if you guys if anybody on the call has ever had the opportunity where a customer, a vendor, or anyone really that received a PDF from your accounting system took it into Adobe Acrobat, made changes to it, or something like that, and then came back to you. But now Sage Intacct will prevent that from happening. So if you check this one box for the printed document template information, and this is under platform services and then printed document templates, or document templates, you would then go into each individual template, and there is a checkbox to make it a secure PDF. So at that point, then nobody can edit it, sign it, extract it, copy it, comment on it, anything like that. It is a carved in stone PDF, and it is on each individual document template. So don't do just one and think that you've got them all. Each of your different document templates, purchase orders, if you've got multiple invoice formats, orders, quotes, receipts, any PDF documents that go out via a template the box has to be checked individually on each one. Okay, and that, again, that may not seem like much, but that is a big security feature within the system to ensure that what you're sending out stays the way that you sent it out. Cash management. All right, so matching rules. Matching rules are new and improved rule sets, matching rules. They are new and improved. As of R3, they first came out with R2. You do need to set those up before you can work with a bank feed or an import file for matching transactions. And there are separate rules or permissions, sorry, for rules and rule sets. And you see a screenshot down there at the bottom. You do have to go in, and this is something really to mention in general. A lot of these updates that come out with each of these quarterly releases, you do need to go in and check security permissions. If it's new features, new functionality, and it's part of the core that you should have access to, but you don't see it, chances are there's a box that needs to be checked or multiple boxes that need to be checked for you to get to that functionality. So it's not a bad idea after each release to check your security, attend webinars like this, read the release notes from Intacct, and just see if there are things that you need to adjust in your security. Okay. But they did come out in release 2. The rule sets are important for using, and actually are required for using it, but they do give you a lot of control over how the matching is done. So prior to R2, Intacct had the rules. Intacct did the best it could from a matching standpoint. Now you can go in, for example, and say, I want to create a rule that says if it's this kind of transaction and it's within these dates of each other and it's within this dollar amount, or this matches exactly, or what have you, then I would like for you to go ahead and pre-match these transactions for me. So, this goes back to, again, the bank feeds. It goes back to the bank reconciliation and really being able to hone down how you want to automate those things to happen. So it's great to have it. Sage Intacct isn't in charge of your bank reconciliation rules anymore. They're putting this in your hands and really letting you tailor it to the way that you need them to be in your organization. So what's changed in R3? They've improved the grouping. You can now group bank transactions, not just Intacct transactions. So here in this little screenshot, you see you can group transactions by and then either document number or posting date. This could be useful in cases where maybe multiple things cleared or were recorded in one way in one system, and then maybe they were grouped in another. This will help you to match those. You can now create rules that only look at specific kinds of bank transactions. You've got some additional operators in the matching and filtering fields, and then flexible date comparisons using the matching operator of within. So within 5 days, within 7 days, something of that nature. So a lot more capabilities here added into the matching rules and the matching rule sets inside of Intacct to help you really automate as much as possible those bank reconciliations and your cash management. Inter-entity Buildback. So now in accounts receivable, you can enable inter-entity Buildback. You can create bills as a draft, or you can post the bills directly. But if you have multiple entities, you have an ability or a need to do those bill backs, then we can accommodate that for you. And we can now accommodate that for you when VAT and GST taxes are involved as well. Right? So part of, again, that multi-tax, that internationalization, we're now taking that up a level in AR as it relates to inter-entity bill back. That's a great feature. Set up vendor and customers to be used, map the vendor and the customer in the entity's information. So if you've got if you have set up, or you do set up, or actually to do the bill back, you will need to set up, I should say, sorry, a vendor and a customer for the entity. And then in the entity setup, you will tag the appropriate vendor and customer. So you'll need to create a vendor and a customer to do the bill back, and then you'll need to tag them inside of the entity itself in the setup in order to be able to process the transactions. Bill back template information, you create these, you enable the inter-entity posting as it shows here. Here's your invoice GL account, there's your bill GL account, your different departments if need be, different memos here for these templates that will be your starting point for these kinds of transactions. And then here's your inter-entity account mapping with the receivables, the payables, and the different entities that are involved. Okay. So just a little bit more setup here with these. And then if you're looking at the invoice, just this is an example of an invoice here with a customer's balance. This is the entity 200 that we're showing, Canadian dollars, exchange rates. Bill back revenue is the account that we've hit here. And then the AP bill shows the correct location based on the intercompany. So it's picking up the bill back expense. It's picking up the vendor here, the pay to vendor, but it's showing the 200 qubit location because we've got the 200 qubit entity over here for Canadian dollars. So we've got the bill back revenue on the invoice with the location of 100. We've got the AP bill over here with the vendor 100 and the location 200. So the two documents are created, the two documents match each other. And then this goes through how to create the invoices. So created in the same transaction, converted to each other's entity-based currencies, etc. Supports here the three-way currency, so you can see the euros, the GBPs. This is tied to your different locations. This is the euro and the US dollars with your locations here in California. Transactional euro in both cases is, or transactional currency in both cases is euro. Base currency in this one, this entity is US dollars and this entity is GBP. So we're able to do those translations within the bill back process as well. Okay. Certainly reach out to us on that one. That does require more setup and a little bit more explanation and time than what we've got to go through right now. So apologize for shooting through that kind of quickly, but if you have a need for that, then please do let us know. We'd be more than happy to set up some consulting time and run through it with you. All right, so in the distribution area, we now are including some information for cross-references. And as you can see here, we've got a PC computer, some cross-references here for customers. That item is a cross-reference item ID. For some customers, or actually, okay, so for customer 1, these are cross-reference items, alternative items for this customer. Here's a substitute alternate, a general substitute item, and then here's a vendor with a cross-reference item. And then you can see up here under the Power Aerospace Materials that in this customer that they've got the item cross-references, and we're going back here to the data consolidation machines that you see here, and then some additional cross-reference information here. So if you've got a case where it would be advantageous to have this kind of cross-reference information in your system, then Intacct absolutely can accommodate this now. We did have the ability for the substitute items, but this is a greater capability to get down to customer and vendor levels with these different cross-reference information on the item level, on the vendor level, and on the customer level. So the cost of goods update has been retitled to the MIV costing update, and I had what MIV stood for prior to starting this presentation, and now I can't remember what it said, what it actually stands for. But it's a feature that's always been there in the system, the cost of goods sold update, or not always, but it's been there for years. In the inventory and distribution side, something that does get run fairly often. It's been given a new name, and for new customers, it is now marked by default. So you don't have to go in and check the box as a new customer anymore. That is marked by default and will run nightly to recalculate your cost of goods sold. Okay. Cycle count has added the item description. So you can now see the item description in the cycle count information, not just the item ID, but you can now see the description. Handy feature to have as you're doing these cycle counts. Make sure you've got the right information. You can now manage in-transit warehouse transfers, which can allow time between the transfer in and out for that movement. New configuration options, new transaction definition is created for the in-transit transaction. Draft mode is available, and of course, the API and the import templates have been updated. So if you go into inventory control, under enable in-transit transfers, the box here now to new transfers default to in-transit. Okay. So again, just making improvements in the system, getting the system set up to the point in which you would be able to more accurately manage your inventory, the location of your inventory, the status of your inventory, your quantities, where they are, all those things. Just trying to give you more insight, more definitive insight into that. Here's your transaction definition. Here you have an inventory total, and this is a status called in transit. You're going to maintain the quantity, and you're going to add to that quantity. So here we've got a transaction definition for the in transit warehouse transfer. As you're doing a warehouse transfer, then your transfer type becomes in transit, your estimated transfer out date, and your estimated transfer in date. In this case, for example, we anticipate a 4-day time span for the movement of the goods from warehouse to warehouse. So we've got that noted here so that we can keep up with where those goods are. And we also do have now the draft status for this as well. There is an in-transit transfer report. You can go into the customer report wizard. You can go into ICRW, any of those tools that you want to, build and enhance this information with. Use the inventory control transaction detail data object. Select the sys warehouse in transit transaction definition. excuse me, and then you can get a report similar to what you see here. A couple more inventory enhancements: build kit tracking, parent finished good item only. It's not quite ready for complete public consumption, but they are putting out some teaser functionality for it now. So if you are doing a lot of work with kits inside of Sage Intacct, this is something we'd love to talk to you about kind of one-on-one with this. But I do want you to know that the functionality is there. You've got, it does accommodate bins, lots, serial numbers, all of those things, stockable kits. Component items are not yet supported in this. R4, which will be due in November, will support the component level tracking. So again, they get these features out, they get some things working with it to get it out there to handle, you know, at least some level of customer need, and then they continue to add to this functionality on a quarterly basis to improve the tools that are there. So the build kit screen here, you've got the ability now for the serial lots and bins down here at the bottom. So you've got additional functionality again in this build kits that you're able to take advantage of. And it probably is something that we could work with you more individually on if you do have kits within your organization. And I know we do have some out there that have the inventory and work with the kits. Here's another chance for an early adopter. So we mentioned previously the payments with CSI is in an early adopter program, although it's probably more at a tail end of an early adopter program. This is the fulfillment grid early adopter program. So it deals with tracking an order from entry to picking and packing. Beyond R3, it's also going to include shipping and invoicing. It's turned on in inventory, new menu items in OE purchasing and inventory, and there are new permissions. So this is something just like the payments by CSI that is not rolled out to everyone, but is available if you give us a message, leave us a message, give us a call us, email us, whatever. We can potentially get you into this early adopter program. And then when you do this, you can go into inventory control, and you'll see new areas in here for fulfillment with picking and packing and what transaction definitions this applies to. So new features, early adopter program for the fulfillment grid. If you're using inventory, this has the potential to be a really nice function to have inside the system. Okay. And with that, we have 5 minutes left in our time today. So I am going to pause here and see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Philip. At this time, we do not have any questions, but like we said, we always encourage them. We've got a few minutes, and please send anything our way. Use the chat feature, and we're here to help.
Great. All right. So at this point, here I'll flip forward to my information. If you need to reach out to me for anything that we've talked about today, you got my contact information here. Give me a call, shoot me an email. I am at your disposal if you have questions about things, if you want to talk about whether a new feature is right for you. I may not have the answers, and you know, chances are at this point now with all the new features and me not doing the implementations that much anymore, I don't have all the answers, but I do know some very talented people that have all of the answers that you could ever want, and I will make sure that you get in touch with the right folks. Thank you.